Hello, I'm Comrade Lee. Welcome to Marxist class. Sorry I haven't been posting recently. I've been a little sick, but I've gotten over it and we're gonna start posting pretty regularly now. Our subject for today is dialectical materialism. Pretty strong subject, and I'm not really trying to convince anyone of any one thing today. I'm just trying to explain, I'm trying to educate. And likely if you're open-minded enough to watch through this whole thing, to understand this, then eventually you'll come around to whatever I consider a correct opinion. So what is dialectical materialism? Let's break down this. So dialectics is the idea that change comes about in society due to contradictions, or it happens because a system doesn't work in the modern sense, like capitalism doesn't work or communism doesn't work. So dialectics, the whole idea is that change comes about because of contradictions, because the system does not work. Now, it's more than dialectics, right? Dialectical materialism. So this is because Marx expands on this theory a little bit. He says, this is because people have ideas to change within a society because of their material conditions. So materialism is like the material world is the foundation for people to have these ideas, for people to understand their conditions. Their conditions is what drives them to change the system. That's how it proves it does not work. So political and historical events, history of the world, is basically a history of your material conditions. So people are driven ultimately by their material needs. So you can basically say that history, the whole world, is driven by this. It's driven by material basic conditions and needs. And that ultimately drives the systems down. It drives the moving wheel of history. It's the dialectic part of it is the whole idea of the system does not work. So we're driven by our conditions and our needs to overthrow it. Thus is the history of the world. The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles. Karl Marx. So materialism also brings up that reality is entirely driven off of conditions and needs. Reality is material, right? It's not some idea. It is not all in your head. That is not what reality is. We live as a subject or a result of the world around us. That is our conditions, our environment, our atmosphere. And thus, human thought and ideas are shaped by the world around us. So that's what makes us think the way we do, is our conditions, our needs, our material reality. So instead of just the individual or the group idea changes reality, their material conditions shape their idea. So that's what really is the driving motivator and what causes the change of history or reality. I know that's a lot to grasp, and other people may be following along and other people may not. So I'm just gonna go ahead and explain that in a different way. What are your ideas based off of? They're based off of your surrounding, your environment, your world, your material conditions. So thus, if your conditions are being affected, or if your world and environment is being affected by the system that you live in, naturally you're going to want to overthrow it. So that's what history is based off of. History, the history of the world, is the history of class struggles, like in what I just showed you. So talking about the history of the world, let's actually look at the history of the world. So there's a bunch of eras, and I'm going to gloss over large parts, but we're just going to generally look at this, okay? I might explain this in more detail in another video. So there was the early time, and then there's class societies arise, or you could just call it civilization, and then you could say feudalism came after that, and then capitalism, what we live in today, in some form. And then what's after that? We don't know. Haven't just stopped at capitalism, I'll tell you that right there. There's always better systems, okay? Not every system that we make, especially one that was made 400 years ago, isn't a perfect system, my friend. People shared everything in early human group, right? They just kind of did everything they did for survival. That's not very efficient. That's not a very good mode of being, right? So what are you going to naturally want to do? You're going to want to settle down. You're going to want to start to farm. Have enough food. Have a surplus. But what do you do with this surplus? Right? Because some people in this society, there's inequality, right? This is not a very good system. Early civilizations is not a very good mode of living. It's not a very good idea to how you run your civilization. So what is the problem within their society? There's major inequalities, but it's how they distribute their surplus food, right? So some people have way more food. Some people don't have to work, but others are working for what they need. And this surplus allows inequality to grow. If you have more than what you need, how do you decide who gets more of just what they need? I mean, it's going to be the ruler, it's going to be the monarch, it's going to be these elite few that are justified their hierarchy through being born in that position or something random, being a religious figure or something. And other people are owned. Other people are slaved. But there's a problem with being owned, right? It causes conflict. People don't like to be slaves. And it also causes inefficiency. So what are you going to do? You're going to revolt naturally against this system. You're going to revolt. There's a new system, right? A better system. Feudal system. The feudal system, the landowners own land and the peasants work it. But there's a problem. As industry starts to develop, as people start getting new advancements in technology, this system is very rigid, right? It's very hierarchical for unjustified reasons. So that causes conflict. You revolt. People are really poor while other people are really rich. You can see what would cause people to revolt about that. And this conflict leads to capitalism. So capitalism, I'm not going to go into depth about this, but basically things are privately owned, or factories or businesses or the means of production, whatever you want to say, are privately owned for profit. And the workers have to sell their labor for wages. So you could call it wage slavery. But there's a problem, there's a contradiction within the society, right? Workers create value but don't get any of it. That's basically thievery. Your business owner, the person who owns the business, just because it's his private property, he gets to justify him taking away things, taking away value from his workers for profit. And also, there's bigger problems that are arising as well. Like, literally, the whole system is based off of profit. If you care about the environment, you should care about this one contradiction. You should care that capitalism is based off of profit and not at all. I'm putting an equal sign with an X through it. Human need. There you get starvation and horrible problems. Things are private property. A piece of bread is not owned by the people who need to eat that bread. They have to sell their labor for wage in order to be able to buy that piece of bread so they can live. So I wonder if people are going to revolt to cause another system to come about into being. What could that possibly be? Anyway, Thank you all for watching this video. I hope it was a decent enough explanation for you people. Obviously, there's so much more to explain, but honestly, I just recommend you guys reading directly from the source. So check the description for books or for authors I might recommend. And I think you already know, like, the basics. Get to it already. Just read some books so I don't have to explain this. But yeah, anyway, go get them.